To make this opening talk for the celebration of the 18 years of the program Organics Brazil. And before I make this introduction, I just want to share that I was a part of the team who started promoting organics products globally with the Organics Brazil back in 2004. And after that, Organics Brazil moved to the institution called Organis, which is supporting this live talk, and this is and which is permitting that for us to make this meeting today and opportunities. And we introduced many business partners. We broke frontiers to make a world more conscious and to become more organic. And today we have this opening event, and we have the honor to have, what I believe is the person who mostly helped to create organic awareness and standards, not only in the U.S. but globally. So she was founder of the organization called Hana, which we call Organic Food Production Association of North America, which later on turned on to be Organic Trade Association. And she led this organization for 16 years, starting with, I think, maybe a couple of hundred associates. And I think now it's more than 9,500 business associates. So I think it's achievement that we have to recognize, that you are of such extreme importance for the establishment of the National Organic Program from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And she also served 8 years as executive director at iPhone, where we met, where we had the opportunity to talk and have a personal contact. And today she's still active in this model role for everybody at initiatives such as the Climate Collaborative, and I don't know if she's still on the Sustainable Food Trade Association, and probably many more that we don't know. But we are, besides, of course, being a global independent consultant. So we welcome Katherine DiMatteo. Thank you very much. It's an honor to have you.
Well, thank you. It's my honor to be asked to celebrate with you.
Yes, and for us, the most important thing that we came in this situation of the pandemic is, we miss so many personal contact, and so I would begin asking you to tell a little bit of where you are, what you are doing, how organic is present in your life today, and what you would like to share with us at this moment.
Well, I am sitting in Massachusetts on the East Coast of the United States, in my office that I've occupied for, since 2007. So I'm an old hand at working at home. The pandemic didn't change much for me in that respect, but it certainly did change, as you said, Ming, that we can't get together. The in person, there's a lot missing because we can't be in person and exchanging ideas and getting to know the people that are operating the farms and who are operating the businesses, throughout the world. It's a loss, I think, in terms of our progress together. But we're all managing through, and I've been doing mostly volunteer work this last year, but up until the beginning of the year, I was actively doing consulting work in the organic sector, continuing the work that I started off in 1990 at AFPANA, making sure that people understand the regulations if they want to be certified, um, helping people understand what organic principles and practices are about, why they can contribute to a better environment, healthier planet, healthier people by supporting organic. And it's a lifetime work, I would say. I don't, I'll do it in different ways now than I had been doing for the past 30 years, but I'll still hope to contribute.
Oh, good. Do you remember when you were last time in Brazil?
No.
Okay.
I
It
don't
was
remember
in,
the year. I remember the event, but I don't remember the year.
yeah, so you were in Brazil in 2013 at the
Ah,
at the BioFA America Latina,
uh-huh.
Yes.
Yes.
And you were at that time you were the head of the IF1, exactly the
Hmm.
IF1, and it was a very interesting trip because we have the opportunity to share a little bit about your role also as the OTA head.
Hmm. Hmm.
We have your presentation talking about the U.S. market, right? And
Right.
I think we have a picture of you presenting a little bit about the both the U.S. and the Canadian market.
Right. Right.
And so then jumping into this days that you were there, I think I think at that time 2013 you present a number that was very interesting and to compare to today. And we have a picture of you showing that the size of the US market in 2013, which was the end of 2012. And you will see the picture in a few moments. But today I would say a little bit more than 7 years later, right, this number double.
Yeah.
And I don't know if my team can show the video, the picture about Catherine showing the numbers of the US market. Oh yeah, there it is. Remember this number?
Yeah. Yeah.
So today I would say that was 2013. Now it's 2020, but it's 2021. But I could say it's a little bit over 7 years. But there is a rule of in the economics says the rule of 72, which means if you put given a 10% annual rate of return, you can double your investment in 7.2 years. So making this comparison, I would ask you, what do you think about this growth?
Well, I mean, it's satisfying, isn't it? That um, both the amount of production has increased, although that is more worrisome than the dollar value of the marketplace. We still are creeping along in terms of the number of acres globally that are under organic production, but the sales and the support for organic is stayed steady. There's fresh product is still in very very high demand, and dairy has had its ups and downs, but it seems to have steady a steady growth, or at least maintaining a level of growth that's good for that sector. And processed products of all kinds now are use organic ingredients, and that's where I think we see most of the growth in terms of that market value of organic is in the many different kinds of products that one can buy both in food and beverage, but also in healthcare, beauty care, and clothing.
Yes, I think the numbers from the OTA research pointed out that last year the food sector grew, the organic food sector grew about 13%, 12.8, and then the non-food a little bit less than 9%. And that, I think that it's a number that is very considerable. So this is achievement that started back in your work, I would say back in 1990, right? When I think you had a really strong involvement with the retail, wholesale, and food co-ops, and seeing now the market going to the mainstream. How do you see this turnover? This journey. How do you see with good eyes, and how is your impression about that?
Well, I think that as interest by the public is expressed, then the mainstream retail stores and processors and brands realize that there's a segment of the population that they're not serving. And as many businesses, want to be smart and stay on the cutting edge and ensure that they have as many products for as many customers as possible, they started to see that this organic was not a fad. It wasn't going to here one day and gone the next, or for a few years, and people would lose interest in it. And the interest just kept growing, that they realized that this was an opportunity for them to provide more products and keep their customers, or even bring in new customers. And I believe once the federal regulation in the US went into place in 2002, there was also that confidence in that label, that organic label, and that what they were selling to the public, they weren't going to be caught in some sort of, mistaken identity, or not genuine product that they were selling. So for a retailer or a brand, certainly their reputation is something very important to them. So when the reputation for organic was legislated and regulated, then I believe that there was a level of confidence that came in and allowed for more mainstream businesses to get engaged with organic.
You were, since the General Organic Food Act back in 1990, right? You were there, right? And now I want to bring a picture, a very interesting picture, when you were in Brazil, when you met our major legislator at that time. I don't know if you remember him, but his name is Rogério Dias. And, yes. And we introduced you to you, so you could be aware of who is the person who was working in our regulation. And going into the regulation, I want to share a few things that is very similar to what happened in Brazil. And I would just want to share it so you can explain a little bit of what happened. So in Brazil, we had a law that was enacted in 2003, but it was only implemented in 2011 because we have to go through different steps with the society, involving different stakeholders, different ministers, so we can have it implemented and have our organic seal. So I know that in the US, you have the Food Act that was launched in 1990, but it was the whole process was only implemented in 2002, right?
Right. Yes.
So 12 years.
Yes.
So explain to us. We took 8 years, and US took 12 years. Tell us what happened.
Well, a number of factors. The legislation was passed in 1990. I would say the administration at the time and those in Congress were not particularly excited about having the legislation, but it did manage to get passed by a floor vote for us in the House of Representatives, which is unusual. That doesn't usually happen. Usually it goes to committee, and then the committee recommends it, and then people sort of go along. But if you're following anything that's going on now with our infrastructure bill, it's the same kind of thing. Well, no, someone says, let's do this. No, let's do that. Let's change this. Let's do that. But so we eventually had to have a floor vote, which meant that everyone had to vote, stand up and vote and not just let the committee do the work. But so there wasn't that much excitement about it when it was passed into legislation. There wasn't a lot of support for it, and there was nothing put in the budget to work towards the implementation. The legislation created our National Organic Standards Board, and that board had to be appointed and then to meet and begin to make their recommendations to the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And there was no money. So there was no money for a department within USDA. There was no money to convene a committee to begin the recommendation process until 1995. Wow. So for 5 years, there not much of anything happened. So in 1995, the first National Organic Standards Board was convened, and they began their work. And there was enough money for a department within USDA to have some staff, but there was only, I think, two staff members at the time. And then it grew to about maybe 5 or 6 by 2000. So between 1995 and 1997, the National Organic Standards Board made their recommendations. The staff wrote it all up into regulatory language, and it was presented to the public. That's our process. So that regulation was presented to the public in 1997, and there were sections of what was written that we didn't like. So for all the work that had been done, some things were not put into the regulation, but put into questions. So they asked us questions. Would you consider genetic engineering compatible with organic production? Would you consider sewage sludge compatible with organic production? Would you consider antibiotics in livestock compatible with organic production? So there was this whole series of questions, because one can imagine that the mainstream agriculture sector wanted those things and wanted to be able to continue to do some of the practices that they'd been doing for a while. So we organized everyone in the organic community, all the businesses, all the consumer groups, the environmental groups all got together, and we organized a response of over 200,000 comments, individual comments on the regulations saying no, 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 no. These were not the recommendations that the National Organic Standards Board presented. And no, 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 we don't want these in the regulation. So it went back, and with that many comments, that was persuasive enough so that the second regulation came out in 2000. In early 2000, we saw it again, and it was much more acceptable, and it was put into place at the end of 2000. And the regulation gave the industry or businesses and farms 2 years to come into compliance. So from 2000 to 2002, everyone had to learn what the changes would have to be, and they would have to begin to get certified. And the certification organizations would have to go through the approval process within USDA. So come 2002, we have approved certifying agents that can certify these businesses that have begun to change all the things so they're in compliance with the regulation. And that's how our process happened. It was, lack of funds, a little kind of mischievous work, mischievous work by people who wanted to see some things added that we didn't agree with. And then a couple of years to give everybody time to get their production and their certification in order.
At that time, what was your capacity in doing the job? You were the executive director of Hana, right?
Right. Well, I came in as the executive director of Hana in 1990, and then we changed our name to the Organic Trade Association, and I was the executive director until 2016. So,
okay, and
I'm sorry, 2006. Sorry,
2006. Yeah.
Until 2006. So I was there leading my staff and our members to, put their opinions in to the National Organic Standards Board, put their opinions in when the regulations came out, bringing compromise within our membership, working with the other organizations that were active to have a unified voice about what it was that we wanted. And at the same time, showing retailers and distributors that there was a market for organic products. So trade shows, conferences, events. We launched, the Organic Trade Association launched All Things Organic.
All Things Organic in Chicago, right?
Right after 2000. And that trade show was only organic products.
Yes.
And it wasn't the first show. Of course, BioFoc was the first show that did an all organic, but we were the first here in the United States that just had organic products at the trade show. And then we partnered with other specialty food organizations and fresh produce organizations and had independent shows, but in the same big venue in Chicago. So you could go from one show to the other with the same pass. And that really helped bring the mainstream to learn about organic, and also for the organic people to make new connections with other suppliers and other types of products.
Wow, I didn't know. I was at the ATO show in Chicago, and I didn't know that was the starting of the booming of the thing.
I would say that really was. I mean, I think that our first shows were in Austin, Texas, and then we moved to Chicago in this like kind of collaboration with these other trade associations.
Right.
And it really was I think a springboard to connecting what we were doing with what the rest mainstream industry was doing.
And this process of writing the different consultations about the regulation, what was the percentage of farmers and processors and business industries? Because we have experienced that when we were working our legislation, most of the inputs came from farmers, very few from processors.
Right. Well, it was I would say when the law was written, it was mainly the organic farmer organizations, the environmental and the consumer groups. Okay. There was a small processing and the OTA or AFPANA at the time. We were one of the few organizations that had processors and farmers and certifiers as part of our organization. But the processing section and of the community was quite small compared to the farming sector, which was small compared to overall farming. But anyway, so during that, to get the law passed, I would say the processor did not have the strongest voice or the largest voice in the proceedings. But as we were approaching that regulation after 10, towards the end of the 10 years, there were many more processors, and they had a much stronger voice, and they were much more active by then. And I would say it was more evenly distributed between the farmer organizations and farmers, the processors, and the OTA, and the environmental and consumer groups. So it was fairly well balanced voices up towards the end of 2000, and in the comments on the two proposed regulations.
So when we were explaining a little bit about the difficulties, of course, the money difficulties, lack of resources.
Mm-hmm.
But I saw your face a little kind of strange when you talk about the forces that maybe, imagining you alone going to the USDA, talking to the people at USDA, and then you said that we were two people at that time, and nowadays the National Organic Program it has its own department,
Mm-hmm.
So
How
was the resistance at that time? Because the big business, the big agribusiness, how was this experience for you?
It was a very interesting experience because, as you say, there was resistance. I mean, there were very, very few people within the department who understood what we were doing. How can you grow food this way? And what do you mean you don't want to have all these things for processing? You want to have a really limited amount of, processing aids and, non-organic ingredients that can be used, in a final product. And there just wasn't anybody who was working or thinking in that way. So it was a lot of education that we had to do during those early years. But once this, staff got on board, and I think even though they hired folks that had been in the department for a while, in USDA for a while, and didn't come from an organic background, they became very committed to what we were trying to accomplish and what the law had asked them to do in terms of putting a regulation out. And they worked rather cooperatively with all the rest of us while the NOSB was meeting and in writing their regulation. Towards the end of 2000, there started to be people from the organic sector hired to work at USDA in the organic department. And also Kathleen Merrigan, who was really the mother of the Organic Foods Production Act. She became an administrator of the National Organic Program within USDA. Mm-hmm. And then even later, she was the Undersecretary of Agriculture. So she, in the Obama administration, so she came back during the Obama administration as the undersecretary. So Kathleen's influence in 1989, in the Organic Foods Production Act, her influence in 1997 through 2000 in getting the regulation done, and then her coming back as the undersecretary later, 10 years after that, to really help continue to get support and within not only that National Organic Program Department, but throughout USDA. So she was very influential in that. So things kept improving over time, and more staff members, more and more people in Congress were actually organic farmers or bought organic food. And so it became easier and easier over time. Where now we're not seen as odd or unusual or to the people up on the Hill or to the people within USDA.
And I think one of the major role that OTA now does is the advocacy, especially when it goes to Washington to DC, right? And all the Congress.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, did you have any support from any
You're you're frozen up. I don't know if you're frozen or there you go.
Yeah.
So I didn't hear the end of your question, but you were asking me, do we have any support from legislators or
right?
Yes, we did. Yeah, we did. A handful, a very strong handful, pretty powerful people. Actually, Senator Leahy, who's just announced his retirement here, but and a junior congressman from Oregon, Congressman DeFazio, they were the architects, and they used Senator Leahy had a lot of influence, and he brought in others. And Congressman DeFazio, as a new member, was able to talk to his the freshmen or the new members of Congress that came in with him. So there was from both ends. We had influence with the people who had been in Congress in a long time, and we had some influence with people that were just coming into Congress and wanting to make their mark. So that was very, very important during the years to pass the law. And then, as I said, as it became more and more familiar, and as the OTA and other groups went up to the Hill and showed people that it was a good business proposition, that this was a voluntary regulation. It wasn't mandatory, it was voluntary, so a business could do it if they wanted to have this market opportunity. And as mainstream agriculture and as mainstream retail and food sector sort of started getting interested in this opportunity, that was helpful also to bring more people on board to support us. Now, there's a very strong caucus, an organic caucus that exists in the House of Representatives.
Yeah, and I think today you can see the researches, market researches. They said that 3 out of 4 conventional stores, they offer organic. I mean, organic now is mainstream, right? Mm-hmm. And then you have several voluntary situations, like when Michelle Obama set up the organic nursery at the White House,
right.
And then artists talking about organic having a healthier diet or routine, healthier, active exercising, doing all the things towards get a better quality of life. I think this was right after this process of the legislation, right? The market was already on, right?
Yes.
That gave a push, a stronger push, right?
Right. After the regulation came in place, it definitely gave a stronger push.
Yes. And I wanna also share a picture about we talk a little bit about the market development. So we have to talk about mergers and acquisitions in the market. Although you left, I mean, you didn't leave, but you get off from OTA in 2006. I think in 2008 when it came the crash of the market, but it's when the organic movement also continued to grow, right?
Yeah, so slower, but we managed through that quite well.
Right, very well.
And in the pandemic, very well.
And the pandemic as well, right? But there's a picture that you are with a person that I don't know if you recall, but I will see if you can see the picture. But the picture, okay, I that's the consultant, but yes. this guy was the founder of a company called Mãe Terra. Mãe Terra is Mother Nature, right? And he was bought by Unilever in about 2-3 years ago.
Really?
Yes. And so I brought this picture because it's very interesting, because the process of mergers and acquisition that happened back in the 2010, 11 in the US, it's what is happening right in Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
so the big corporations are looking into the health
Mm-hmm.
style, and
Mm-hmm.
they are setting up their supplier chains.
Mm-hmm.
They're preparing their productions, you know, and they're scaling up.
Mm-hmm.
And recently we have the store, we in 2018 we have the crazy, I say the crazy thing because, you know, you see Amazon buying Whole Foods, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And in Brazil, this year, in the beginning of this year, also a big commercial chain called Americanas purchased a very well known chain also called Natural da Terra, which is in proportion, I would say it's an Amazon, a Brazilian Amazon buying a Brazilian Whole Foods. I would
Oh.
say this.
Uh-huh.
But it's very similar, you know. There are
Yeah.
similar situations, you know, and so and you, as your past, again, talking your experience, you focus a lot on the retail and wholesale co-ops, where, you know, we still have some street markets in Brazil where producers sell directly to consumer.
Mm-hmm.
But now, as the globalization comes in and all the technology comes in, now it's something that we don't know where you're gonna end, right?
Ah.
So
Uh-huh.
what do you think about this?
Well, from what I've seen, there's room for a lot of different markets. And I don't, even with technology, I don't think that's going to change. I think that the farmers markets and farm stands um, are still appealing to a lot of people to, you know, to go there for especially fresh produce. I mean, that's the main thing that you're going to purchase. So, and they like to meet the farmer. They like to speak to the people who are selling the product that may have worked on, you know, maybe working on the farm. Um, so we haven't seen a slide down in any of the direct market opportunities for farmers. And even the small and mid-sized retail chains are, you know, they still sell an abundant amount of organic. I think it's our consumer base that's bigger. And the consumers have different preferences of where they would like to shop. Some like to shop in the mainstream store. Some like to shop at the farmers market. Some like to shop at the co-ops or the, you know, small scale independent stores. Or some do it all places. But if they can find organic in all those places and they want to shop organic, then it makes it really easy for them that they can choose in all those places. And I don't see that changing. Online is going to be there, you know. The stores are going to be there, the farmers markets, farm stands. I think it's going to be. I think that it's just going to continue to be a combination of venues for retail.
And do you think
I don't think that's going to change.
but do you think that as the base grows, especially the retail, the integrity is very important for the sector, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how can you keep up with the integrity, you know?
Yeah, well, that is the challenge, and of course, that was the challenge that brought us to having the law and the regulation, because the question was the integrity. You know, anybody can put a label on a product, and until they're proven to be false, then they can sell that product that way. Or if people are confused about what the label means, like natural, that doesn't, you know, can mean anything at all. You know, until people know that they don't know what they're getting, they'll buy the product. So integrity was what drove us to have to go to the federal government, have a federal law, have a federal regulation, and now it's a matter of uh, advocating for enough funds for the National Organic Program to do speedy investigations on complaints and to take action when there's serious fraudulent occurrences, so that the confidence in the label remains strong, so that even if there's mislabeled product or serious fraud, non-organic products sold as organic, if the USDA and the Department National Organic Program can take swift action and have serious consequences, that can keep the confidence in the label.
Mm-hmm. Coincidentally, today, Kobe just sent me an article from the New Yorker. Did you read it?
Well, it's very interesting, because that's not a new story. For all of us in the organic world, that's old. That's an old story that somehow has been resurfaced. And I could take exemption to the fact that they didn't present it as a success of the program, as opposed to raising concerns about the program. So from my point of view, and of course, yes, I am prejudiced because we've worked so hard on this and I know how it works. For us, it proves that it can work.
Yes.
That even though someone did for a number of years get away with something, when it was discovered, it was quickly stopped.
Right.
And then the person was actually convicted.
Right. Yeah.
And a huge fine was also imposed. Now, unfortunately, the person committed suicide, which, but in that aside, the system worked just the way it was supposed to work. When there's fraud, there's a way to stop it and take action and make the action meaningful.
Yeah, that was my reading the article. It's a long article because
my gosh, yes.
Yeah. But as I was reading, I said, well, it took time, but they found out, but it worked, right? In the end, it worked.
It worked. Yeah. And now here in the US, because of that particular fraud, that one, and then there was another big fraudulent incident in Turkey, also with grain. And between those two, the organic community and USDA said, well, we have to tighten things up even more. So there's a new piece of regulation in the United States called Strengthening Organic Enforcement that came out at the beginning of the year. And people have sent in all these comments, and we're waiting for USDA's response and put out, a second proposed rule. I believe they said it will come either at the end of this year or early next year. So our regulation now is going to be strengthened. There's going to be more requirements of inspectors. There's going to be more requirements of certification organizations. Mm-hmm. There's going to be more requirements for people who in the supply chain who before did not have to be certified. They will now have to be certified. So brokers, importers, exporters, distributors, a number of handlers of product that before just had to have affidavits that they had had integrity in their chain, in their part of the handling. They will now have to be certified.
Okay. Yes, I just want to make a comment to our listeners, because I mentioned the article at the New Yorker. The article, I think later on we will send to them to read. It's called "The Great Organic Food Fraud." It was published today at the New Yorker magazine, and I received from Kobe, but we will make available for the readers so they will understand what we are talking about.
Yes, well, hopefully they read it the way you and I read it, which is that it works. It's not that it doesn't work. It actually works when you have a regulation and a law and people paying attention. The integrity can be maintained.
Yes, and Kobe always provoked me. He sent articles, I send articles, and see what we are reading, So and then we share. But my reading was exactly this. After a while, I said, well, it works. It's this perspective, and I think that's the most important for the credibility of the market, and also for such a high number of equivalence agreements that the U.S. has with different countries, and I think this is an achievement that, in one hand, we see that organic is spreading out, right? And in our legislation, we still are working on the equivalency with one country, which is Chile. And one of the reasons is because we have the SPG, the PGS, the participatory, which the Brazilian government is not giving away the right for the participatory guarantee system to be inside the market, which I think there's a good point for that, Yeah. And so how are the equivalency going on? Is it working on, do you see it as a way to spread organic, or is more a threat for farmers? Do the US farmers see as a threat having an equivalency coming the products from different parts of the world, or how do you see farmers perceive the equivalence for them?
Well, I think it would depend on which farmer you were talking about. A small scale farmer, for instance, who would only sell locally or regionally, and didn't sell maybe to the mainstream stores, would not necessarily see that as a threat, because they're not in the same, marketplace. For any larger scale farmer that wants to export, it's beneficial. So even though it's beneficial or a threat or competitive, when the imports come in, if you want to export it, it creates another opportunity if you're a large enough scale to do that. And because the acreage isn't keeping up with the demand, we do have to have a global supply chain. I mean, I don't think that's unique to organic. I think that's the name of the game right now, is that there's a global supply chain now, and we would like to see more organic production domestically, so that more domestic ingredients could be available for domestic processors. But until that time, the equivalency agreements are helpful. And I don't think that people believe that they're getting an inferior product, or if they're not, or they don't believe that they're getting a product that doesn't have organic integrity. So
I want to make a comment. It's more of provocation, because if we see the U.S. market, the organic market in the U.S. is at $62 billion, right? And it's a market that is growing 10, 11, 12% every year. And if we think about opening the boundaries from different parts of the world, is still not enough food to supply, right? In one view is like this, and the other view is, of course, fresh produce doesn't make sense to import. It's make much more sense buying locally. So I see that. How do you see this perception that farmers are afraid of opening boundaries because they will lose the market? But don't you think that the market is still small, even though at $62 billion, and not every household is buying organic, but maybe 8 out of 10 is
Well, mm,
buying.
I don't. Everyone doesn't buy produce fresh, which is unfortunate. And we do get a lot of produce from around the world. So, for instance, we'll get apples, from Chile, and same time we have apples from Washington State or from up here in New England where I live. And so there may, there's that will feel competitive, but I think that the point that you're making is correct. There's just not enough organic yet to be able to feel that we should be just buying domestic. And I think that might be true everywhere. The local movement, buy local movement, has really been helpful, I think, in building our domestic organic marketplace. And I think that could be true in every country or any country. But there's always, products that you can't grow in certain places. And unless we wanted to change the way we ate, then we still have to import some products.
Yeah.
And, here the big thing for us is grains, that we're not growing enough grains to supply the demand in the, here in the States. So whether those grains are for livestock feed or whether those grains are for processed products, we're just not growing enough yet here. Now that's a part of our agricultural production system for organic that can grow quite a bit more. I mean, we have the land. We just need to convince people to, switch over to organic in their production, because the demand is there, but we haven't yet got the supply domestically.
Yes. And well, we are getting close to our session here, and we don't want to bother you more. But in times of the climate change and all this discussion that has been going on, tell a little bit of your involvement with the Climate Collaborative. What is that, and what are you aiming on that?
Well, the Climate Collaborative is an organization of small and mid-sized businesses, mainly in the natural and organic product sector, that are taking action within their businesses to reverse climate change. Or to change their, so they're changing their operations, they're changing their supply chains, they're working in whatever way they possibly can to reduce their carbon footprint. And that we started that organization because our natural and organic product sector had been somewhat silent on other aspects of their business that would fall under sustainability and that would begin to address climate change. So we wanted to draw attention to the fact that we need to take action too. I mean, as a sector within the larger, world of businesses, we too are responsible for climate change, and we can make a difference if we learn as businesses how to do that. And it was an offshoot of the 4 years that I spent as the executive director of the Sustainable Food Trade Association. So the Sustainable Food Trade Association, we were organic companies that were working on how to change their operations to reduce their climate impact. So out of my work there were other organizations and colleagues that came forward and said, we really need to make this a broader organization that includes the natural products industry. And we really need to organize just around climate, not some of the aspects of sustainability like social that the Sustainable Food Trade Association was dealing with. So we designed this, what started off as a campaign and is now an ongoing organization to inform, educate, to inform, educate, provide resources, provide peer knowledge and experts to help the businesses make changes in their operations.
Can you name some of the we when you say we?
Oh, you mean in terms of who's the we and who started the Climate Collaborative? Okay.
Right.
Well, myself as the executive director of the Sustainable Food Trade Association, Laura Dickinson, who is still the head of an organization called One Step Closer to a Organic and Sustainable Community. It's been shortened to One Step Closer. And Nancy Hirschberg, who is a sustainability expert and formerly had worked for Stonyfield Farm.
Oh, is she related to Gary or no?
She's Gary's sister.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That comes in good hand too.
And the fourth person was Jessica Rolfe, who was the founder of Happy Family, which is an organic baby food company. So the four of us got together up at Jessica's at the Happy Family's offices in Boise, Idaho, and we just mapped out this framework for like I said, what we thought was going to be a campaign that then turned into an organization.
Wow. Congratulations for all the initiative, And
wow.
I remember the Happy Family in one of the trade shows a few years ago, and they were a family dressed in like a happy family, like sleepwear, right? And years after, they were purchased by, I don't know, it's a big corporation.
Yeah,
right?
I don't remember myself. And yeah, Jessica now is doing furniture and toys and learning toys for children, babies and children.
Yeah, it's amazing how this journey takes us, right?
Right.
I think your passion is so contaminated, that that we feel so small. Said, oh, we didn't do anything. We still have to do a lot,
Yeah, we do. Yes. Well, and I'm still optimistic.
Yes,
we can do it. We can do it. I mean, it may seem like a long time, take too long, maybe a little too slow, but we can't give up because we need to save the planet. We need to save ourselves and save all the other creatures that we share this planet with. So what better thing for us to work on?
Yes, and we had such a time apart since we last talked, and then a few weeks ago I call you for another reason, and then it came this idea of I should connect, we should connect and share these stories, so I really want to thank you very much for your time, for all the stories and all the remembrances that we have, and it was a really great time. I just wanted you to feel free to give any message. It was a very nice time hearing you.
Well, Ming, thank you so much. It's been wonderful to reconnect with you. I remember those trips to Brazil, and I really appreciate what you're doing. I'm glad that you're in this with us.
Yes. Thank you very much. And the Expo West, right? Expo West is a show that you cannot miss, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So maybe we will meet somewhere.
I hope so. I really
Thank you
hope
very
so.
much.
Thank you. Bye now.
Bye-bye.